This poor little unfortunate star, how pitiful she is. Her mom died of illness a year ago, and her dad found a new woman. After being framed by her stepmom, she was severely beaten and forced to kneel in the snow for a day and a night, barely alive. On the verge of death, Suabo heard voices that others couldn't hear, guiding her to call her uncle. Suddenly a scream cut through the twilight. Accompanied by banging sounds, a pregnant woman rolled down the stairs. The neighboring CEO, Lin Feng, rushed forward and anxiously asked, "What's wrong?" Blood flowed between the woman's legs, and her face turned pale as she cried, "Feng Ji, it hurts so much. Our baby, please save our baby." Everyone exclaimed in shock and hurriedly surrounded her. The old lady, panicked, kept asking, "What happened?" Mu Qingxin, crying, looked towards the top of the stairs. Everyone looked up and saw a little girl around 3.5 standing at the top. Seeing witnesses arrive, she hugged her little rabbit tightly. The old man was furious and asked, "Was it you who harmed Qingxin?" The little girl pressed her lips together and said, "It wasn't me, I didn't do it." Mu Qingxin, pulling on the old man's coat and crying, said, "Don't blame Suabo. She's so young and doesn't understand anything. It wasn't on purpose." This statement confirmed Subao's guilt. Lin Feng, with a cold look, didn't ask any questions and directly said, "Lock her in the attic and I'll deal with her when I get back from the hospital." The little girl cried out, "Daddy, I didn't do it." Suabo was dragged upstairs, hugging her little rabbit and curling up in a corner. Suabo really didn't push anyone. Why doesn't anyone believe her? Her lips turned purple from the cold, shivering helplessly. She could only close her eyes and murmur, "Mom, Suabo didn't do anything wrong, Suabo doesn't admit it." Clutching the ears of her stuffed rabbit, she fainted. The next morning, Lin Feng, full of anger, grabbed the unconscious Suabo and threw her into the snow outside. The cold jolted Suabo awake, and she weakly said, "Daddy, I'm hungry." Lin Feng sneered, "You killed the baby in Qingxin's belly, and you still have the nerve to say you're hungry? How could Lin Feng have such a vicious daughter?" As he spoke, a thick stick came down hard on little Suabo, making her scream in agony. Frozen stiff, her eyes lifeless, she could no longer speak. "If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'm not your dad. Do you admit your mistake or not?" Covering her head with her hands, Suabo cried out, "It wasn't me, really, it wasn't me." Lin Feng's anger flared even more. "If it wasn't you, do you think your aunt fell by herself? She's 6 months pregnant. What good would it do her to fall?" The more he looked at her stubborn face, the angrier he got. "You did something wrong and still put on this act. Who are you trying to fool?" He couldn't help but remember Mu Qingxin's severe bleeding in the hospital. The doctor had declared her critical twice. Yet, on the brink of death, she had still said to him, "Don't blame Suabo. She's just afraid no one will love her after her brother is born. She didn't mean to push me." The more Lin Feng thought about it, the angrier he became. He beat Suabo while shouting, "Still making excuses? Every word out of your mouth and this stick lands on you." One strike was so hard, his phone fell out without him even noticing. It wasn't until Suabo lay limp in the snow that he stopped. "Kneel here until your aunt is discharged from the hospital," Lin Feng ordered, throwing down the stick and walking away. He was already stressed out. His company had a major issue he'd been trying to fix for half a month without any success, and now he had lost his precious son to a miscarriage. He was at his wit's end, and all his frustration was taken out on little Suabo. Her rabbit was long torn to shreds. She struggled to get up but collapsed back into the snow with a thud. She wondered if dying would let her see her mom again. Just then, a faint voice sounded in her ears, "Suabo, quickly call your uncle. His name is Su Yi, and his number is 159. Suabo opened her eyes and saw a black phone in the distance. Driven by the will to survive, she crawled towards it. Her stiff fingers fumbled, and after what seemed like an eternity, she managed to dial the number. Meanwhile, in an old courtyard house in Kyoto, the old Master Su was giving a speech. "Another year has passed, Dr. Su. Do you think you can pass the chief physician exam this year? The 8 brothers of the Su family kept their heads down, silent. Dr. Su rubbed his nose, but then the old master's tone suddenly changed. "And what about your sister who's been missing for 4 years now?" The faces of the 8 brothers shifted, all of them pursing their lips in silence. "I only have one daughter, Jinyu, and she's been ill since childhood. 4 years ago, her illness affected her memory, and she went missing." "How have these 4 years been for her?" Dr. Su felt immense guilt. That day, he had to save a critically ill patient, and just that once, Su Jinyu went missing. "Dad, it's all my fault. I was her attending physician. It's my fault for not watching over her properly." The room fell into silence. Just then, Dr. Su's phone suddenly rang. The old master had a rule: no phones during morning meetings. Dr. Su quickly picked up his phone, ready to hang up. The old master gave him a cold look and coughed. "Dad, it's an unknown number." The old master set his teacup down and said coldly, "Answer it," and put it on speaker. The 3rd and 4th brothers looked at Dr. Su sympathetically. He had no choice but to answer the call and turn on the speaker. A small voice unexpectedly came through. "Hello, is this Uncle? I'm Suabo. My mom is Su Jinyu. Are you my uncle, Dr. Su?" Upon hearing this, the pen in the old master's hand dropped. The child's voice continued, "Uncle, Suabo is so cold and hungry. Suabo didn't push Auntie, but no one believes me. Dad made Suabo kneel at the door, but it's so cold. Uncle, can you come get me?" As the little girl's voice grew weaker, everyone's throat seemed to close up, unable to utter a word. The sound of wind and snow could still be faintly heard from the other side of the phone, but the child's voice abruptly stopped. Dr. Su finally reacted, clutching the phone close to his mouth, his voice frantic. "Suabo, where are you? Tell Uncle where you are." But there was no response. The old master stood up in a panic, the stern and rigid demeanor from earlier vanished, and he suddenly looked 10 years older. "Quick, trace this number and locate the girl." The girl, 3.5 years old, was falsely accused by her stepmother and abandoned by her father. After her true identity was revealed, it turned out she had 8 powerful uncles. Little Suabo fainted before she could finish her call, and the phone fell into the snow. After who knows how long, Lin Feng came out to find the phone and saw Suabo lying motionless. He kicked Suabo with his foot and said coldly, "Dead is good too." 4 years ago, he had found a woman with tattered clothes and took her back to the palace out of pity. Once cleaned up, the woman turned out to be very beautiful but had no memory and seemed a bit silly. Lin Feng had foolishly found her cute and had been intimate with her. Suabo had no resemblance to him, which now made him feel disgusted. So Lin Feng took the phone and walked away. "Mr. Wu, I wanted to ask if you know anyone from the Su family in Jinju. Our company is facing some trouble." The wind and snow outside were fierce. Suabo lay in the snow as time passed. She was barely conscious and couldn't open her eyes no matter how hard she tried. After calling her uncle, there was no response from their side, so did that mean they didn't want her either? And what about her mother? If she died, would her mother abandon her too? Suabo moved her lips, repeating in her heart, "Mom, Suabo won't cry, Suabo is a good girl." Just then, a man kicked open the door of the Lin family's villa. Suichen anxiously scanned the area. Suabo had said she was kneeling at the door. Suddenly, Suichen's face changed as he saw a small pile of snow by the door. Rushing over, he finally saw a tiny figure under the snow. "Suabo, wake up!" Dr. Su quickly picked up the little one. As soon as he saw Subao's little face, he was certain this was their Suabo, because her face was almost identical to his sister's when she was young. Suabo felt herself being embraced warmly, and the person wrapped her in their coat. Little Suabo struggled to open her eyes, and finally saw the man in front of her, who looked a bit like her mother. It was her uncle. Subao's lips moved weakly as she asked, "Are you uncle?" Suabo didn't push anyone, she mumbled instinctively, already losing consciousness. Suyi couldn't help but feel choked up. "Suabo, Uncle is here. Uncle will take you home." He couldn't imagine how Suabo managed to hold on all by herself. Dr. Su picked up Suabo and walked out. Everything happened so fast that the Lin family didn't have time to react. Once in the car, Suichen asked, "What's going on?" Dr. Su anxiously replied, "Hurry to the hospital." Lin Feng, rushing downstairs, didn't see Dr. Su taking Suabo away. When he saw the man in the car, he was stunned. Suicheng, the current head of the Su family and the cold-faced CEO of the Su group, was a legendary figure. For the Lin family, facing a crisis that could spell disaster, a single word from Suichen could bring them back to life. He immediately ran over, smiling. "Mr. Su, please wait a moment. What brings you here?" "Your presence graces our humble home." Suichen's expression remained cold as he scrutinized Lin Feng. "So, this is Subao's father?" While Lin Feng was speaking, the Lin family's elders and servants, who had received the news, came out to greet him with enthusiastic smiles. Without showing any emotion, Suichen simply said, "The Lin family is quite something." With that, he disdainfully said no more and drove away. The Lin family stood there dumbfounded. Lin Feng called someone to ask what had just happened. When she heard that the Su family had come to take Suabo, claiming to be her uncle, Lin Feng felt as if she had been struck by lightning. He suddenly realized something. The Su family had 8 sons and 1 daughter, who had been frail and never appeared in public. This meant that the woman he had found 4 years ago was indeed the only daughter of the Su family. Madame Lin's lips trembled. Suabo is actually a child of the Su family. "We must quickly bring Suabo back." Lin Feng irritably shouted, "Do you think we can just bring her back whenever we want?" Old Master Lin pondered for a moment and said, "Even if the Su family is furious, they can't deny that you're Subao's father. You just need to explain that you were a bit too strict while educating her. Once this is clarified, she'll enjoy wealth and prosperity in the future." After taking Suabo, the Su family didn't return to the capital. Instead, they immediately rushed to the nearest hospital, the best hospital in the southern city. The usually quiet VIP floor was now bustling with activity. Old Master Su, leaning on his cane, paced back and forth, asking repeatedly, "Why isn't she out yet?" Suichen checked the time and said calmly, "Dad, please sit down." Dr. Su handed the examination report to Suichen with a serious expression. After reading the report, the Su family members didn't suppress their anger. Suabo had fractures in her arms, legs, and even her ribs. She had severe injuries all over her body, and some parts were so badly damaged they had to be removed. How could they harm a child just 3 or 4 years old like this? Su Ishan vowed to deal with Lin Feng sooner or later. Such a young child enduring so much suffering. Suichen had already investigated the Lin family thoroughly. Coldly, he said, "The Lin family's products were found to be involved in smuggling and are in crisis. Recently, they've been seeking our Su family's help." Old Master Su gritted his teeth and said angrily, "I'll consider it lucky if I don't kill them, let alone help them." Dr. Su asked, "Why did they beat Suabo?" Suichen replied coldly, "Lin Feng's wife, Mu Qingxian, fell down the stairs and had a miscarriage." Lin Feng blamed Suabo. As they were talking, Lin family members traced their way to the hospital. Suichen's assistant hurried in and said, "Mr. Su, the Lin family is here. They want to see their granddaughter, but the VIP floor is restricted, so they can't come in." Suichen sneered and said indifferently, "Turn off the heat outside this floor and open the windows. Let them wait." Suabo could hear the beeping of the machines around her and voices speaking, though they were faint. "Suabo, little Suabo, wake up. Hey, little backpack, wake up." Whose voice is this again?" Subao's eyelashes fluttered. She finally opened her eyes to see white walls and a group of people surrounding her. She bit her lip and carefully looked around. Dr. Su was the most excited and spoke first. "Suabo, you're awake. I'm your uncle. Do you remember calling me before?" Suabo softly asked, "Uncle, did you come to take me home?" Dr. Su nodded, "Yes, we're here to take Suabo home." Old Master Su took a deep breath, feeling as if his throat was blocked, and said, "Yes, we're taking Suabo home. Once we do, no one can bully you. Whoever dares to will have to deal with your grandpa." Subao's eyes moved around, unsure and worried. She wondered if they would abandon her after taking her home, if they would beat her, or if they would starve her. Seeing Suabo remain silent, the men of the Su family grew anxious. Suichin hesitated for a moment before asking, "What is Suabo worried about?" Dr. Su sighed, leaned close to the bed, gently touched Subao's head, and said softly, "Suabo, tell uncle, what's your name?" After a moment of silence, Suabo replied, "I don't have a name. They just call me Suabo. Dad said he couldn't be bothered to name me and would wait until Auntie had a baby brother. Suabo is the name my mom gave me." Dr. Su's heart ached. He suppressed her anger and asked, "Can Suabo tell uncle what you're worried about?" Suabo finally turned her gaze, struggling to look at the man calling himself her uncle. She bit her lip and asked, "Uncle, will I have food to eat at home? Will I be beaten?" Everyone was stunned. What? Little Suabo was afraid of being beaten? So, just how badly had she been abused at the Lin family? Dr. Su held Subao's small hand against his face and said hoarsely, "Suabo, be good. At home, you can eat whatever you want. No one will beat you. Look, this is your eldest uncle, this is your second uncle, and this is your third uncle. They are all very powerful. We will all protect Suabo, and no one will ever hurt you again." Suabo clutched the blanket tightly and stayed silent for a long time. "But what if you don't like me after I make a mistake?" Just when the Su family thought she wouldn't speak again, she suddenly said, "Little uncle, Suabo didn't push anyone. Dad and Grandpa wanted me to admit it, but I didn't. They didn't believe me and said I killed my brother." Suichen calmly said, "Big uncle believes it wasn't you. It's right not to admit to something you didn't do." Dr. Su also nodded, "They are the ones who are wrong. Suabo did nothing wrong. You did very well." Hearing these words, Suabo suddenly pursed her lips and tears began to fall. "Uncles, Grandpa, thank you for believing in Suabo. You are all so kind." The little girl, who finally had someone to confide in, cried as she spoke, as if the tears she had held back for so long finally couldn't be contained anymore. Suichen looked at the information in his hand and shared the news about their sister, Su Jinyu, with everyone. Beijing and the Nan family are 2,000 kilometers apart. For years ago, Su Jinyu, who was seriously ill and had lost her memory, somehow ended up with the Nan family and was taken in by Lin Feng. Later, Su Jinyu became critically ill during childbirth and almost didn't make it. Perhaps because of the child, she miraculously held on for another 2 years. After she passed away, she left only Suabo behind. Our precious little sister, whom we cherished, died in a foreign land without even a proper status, unknown to anyone. Lin Feng didn't even give her a proper status, yet he dared to treat Suabo like this. Dinger couldn't hold back any longer and asked, "Big brother, are we just going to let them off so easily? Is simply bankrupting them enough?" Suichen slowly unbuttoned his sleeves and calmly rolled them up. "Will sending 8 people be enough?" Hearing Suichen's words, the Su brothers' eyes lit up, a glint of determination in their gazes. Suichen rotated his wrist, his knuckles cracking. Old 5, Su Yina, who worked in construction and had a darker complexion, with a naturally irritable personality, sneered. The gentle pilot, Su Ufa, said in a calm voice, "In a society governed by law, how can we resort to blatant violence?" He turned her head and stopped a nurse. "Excuse me, do you have any burlap sacks here?" The nurse was startled for a moment. "We have woven bags in the pharmacy, and also cardboard boxes." The nurse thought they needed to pack something, and cardboard boxes would definitely be better than burlap sacks. Su Ufa smiled. "Thank you, burlap sacks will do." In the underground parking lot, Lin Feng was on the phone while walking. "I'm heading back first. Make sure to keep an eye out and notify me as soon as they come out." Before he could finish his sentence, Lin Feng felt a sudden darkness in front of him as a burlap sack was thrown over his head. Immediately, a flurry of punches rained down on him, and he couldn't help but scream, "Who are you people? Stop it!" Lin Feng cried out continuously, unable to fight back, only able to take the beating. "Stop! Do you know who I am? I'm Lin Feng, the CEO of Bao Feng Group. Do you dare offend me?" The 8 Su brothers stomped on Lin Feng, beating him relentlessly. Su Chen sneered and raised his hand, making a stop gesture. Seeing them stop, Lin Feng thought they were scared, but then a wooden stick was viciously smashed onto his body. The underground parking lot echoed with Lin Feng's screams. In the VIP ward, that voice appeared again. "Su Bao, little Su Bao, who is little tree bun?" Su Bao opened her eyes. The ward was quiet. She clutched the blanket nervously and looked towards the direction of the voice. "Who are you?" She was a bit scared, and the voice coaxed her gently. "I am your master, call me master." Su Bao scrunched her face, not falling for it at all, and muttered, "I don't have a master, and besides, I'm little Su Bao, not little tree bun." The man clicked his tongue, finding her hard to deceive. Sitting on the table next to the bed was a young man with a ghostly appearance, his face pale, eyes dark and deep, with a high nose bridge and strikingly red lips, exuding a sinister aura. "I really am your master. When your mom was still alive, she had you as my disciple. Your mom's name is Su Jinyu and you're called Su Bao, am I right?" Su Bao didn't believe it. She didn't know this man, and her mom would never give her away. "If you're really my master, why can't I see you?" Su Bao questioned. The man chuckled softly. "Child, don't overthink it. Once I open your third eye, you'll naturally see me. It's normal you don't recognize me, I'm not from your time. My name is Ji Chang, and I was a prominent figure in my lifetime." Su Bao looked at the empty space beside her in surprise. "Ji Chang? Why are you called Ji Chang?" she asked suddenly. "Ji Chang, do great people also die? Can a dead person be a master?" Ji Chang was at a loss for words, finding this little girl a bit challenging. "Su Bao, you might not remember, but I truly am your master. Before your mom passed, she had you pay respects to me, even though you couldn't see my spirit form then. Think back, I helped you just 2 days ago when I told you to call your uncle, remember?" Su Bao clutched the blanket, her eyes downcast. "If you're my master, why haven't you taken care of me?" she asked. "After Mom died, no one cared for me whether I cried or was in pain." Ji Chang was taken aback and then grabbed Su Bao's little hand, feeling a pang of guilt. "It wasn't that I didn't want to. If you hadn't been near death 2 days ago, I still wouldn't be able to talk to you. From now on, I will protect you. I can teach you many things so you won't be bullied anymore. Rest now, I'll visit you later. This is a gift from me." Su Bao felt a slight warmth in her hand and saw a red string tied around her wrist. "See you later, Su Bao." Just then, the door to the ward opened. "Is Su Bao feeling better?" her uncle asked softly, bringing her a custard bun. "I hope you like it." Su Yina suddenly squeezed in, saying, "Fifth uncle's fried beef noodles are the best." The old man tapped his leg with his cane, scolding, "Su Bao just woke up, she shouldn't eat cold beef noodles." He handed over some vermicelli. "Do you want to try some of Grandpa's vermicelli? It's steamed very soft and tastes good." Su Yufa said, "It's better to drink some porridge first to warm up." Su Bao pursed her lips, looked around, and cautiously called out, "Grandpa, I want to eat vermicelli." "Does Su Bao have a family now?" The Su family seemed to see a glimpse of Su Jinyu as a child. 10 days had passed in the blink of an eye, and the doctors were amazed. It was incredible how such severe injuries healed in just 10 days, almost like magic. "Mr. Su, you can take her home today." Su Bao thought, magic? Could it be from Ji Chang? Su Bao looked up. "Uncle, did my little rabbit end up in the villa's yard?" Mr. Su opened his mouth. "Su Bao, your little rabbit is gone. How about Uncle buys you a new one?" Su Bao pouted, her eyes glistening with tears, but she tried hard not to let them fall. She whispered, "But that was a gift from my mom." Su Chen walked in and saw that Mr. Su had almost made Su Bao cry. Frowning, he asked coldly, "What's going on?" Su Ishan looked wronged. Big brother, it wasn't me. Yua left the rabbit for Suabo, but it ended up at that place. Suichen paused, then quickly decided, Suabo, how about uncle takes you to find the rabbit? Suabo thought to herself, besides the rabbit, I also want to bring back Xiao Wu. At the Lin family's house, Lin Feng and old Master Lin were sitting on the sofa in the living room. The once glorious villa was now in ruins, with all the valuable things taken away. Old Madam Lin was crying beside them. Why did you borrow so much high-interest money? What are we going to do now? The day Lin Feng was beaten and hospitalized, the Lin family went bankrupt, and all their real estate was mortgaged. Even the villa they were living in was about to be seized. Old Master Lin scolded angrily. Why are you crying? If I had known this would happen, you should have treated Suabo better back then. Lin Feng shouted irritably, stop talking. What's the use of saying this now? Both elders fell silent, filled with regret. Just then, Mu Qingxin came downstairs. Mom, Dad, Feng, don't worry. As long as we have this rabbit, Suabo will come back. Mu Qingxin held a rabbit in her hand. It was Subao's stuffed bunny, the only keepsake left by her mother and very important to her. I just mended and washed it. Suabo will be very happy when she sees it, she said. Lin Feng was delighted and said, thank you for your hard work. When we turn things around, I will definitely repay you well. Mu Qingxin pretended to be sincere, as long as I can ease Feng's worries. This time, her miscarriage wasn't Subao's fault, but because she had fallen herself. Fortunately, she got rid of the child early, avoiding being tied to the Lin family. If she could secure a place in the Su family, all her efforts wouldn't be in vain. In front of the Lin family villa, 8 tall men got out of the car, followed by old Master Su, who was helped out. Seeing the Su family, the Lin family, who had been waiting at the door, immediately approached them. Lin Feng, wearing a remorseful and pained expression, said, Suabo, it was Dad's fault before. Will you forgive Dad? That day, Dad was anxious and acted too harshly, but it was for your own good. Su Ying'er immediately thought he had been too lenient that day and decided to be harsher later. Hearing this familiar voice, Subao's small body instinctively hid behind her little uncle. Su Ishan coldly asked, enough talk, where is Subao's rabbit? Old Madam Lin replied, it's upstairs. Su Ichen raised his hand, and several bodyguards in black suits rushed inside. The bodyguards quickly brought down the stuffed toy. Subao's face lit up with joy as she hugged the stuffed bunny tightly, saying, little rabbit, Suabo has come to take you home. Suabo will never leave you. Uncle, can you come with me to the woods? Su Ishan nodded. The two went to the backyard, where Suabo called out, Xiao Wu. A bird's chirp came from the woods, but the parrot didn't fly over. Instead, it turned its head and flew away. Suabo whispered into Su Ishan's ear, Uncle, Xiao Wu seems to be afraid of you. Su Ishan lowered his voice as well. Can I have someone catch him? Let's take Xiao Wu home directly, he suggested. Suabo shook her head and said, no, Xiao Wu isn't a bad bird. If we catch him, he'll be scared. Uncle, stay still. I'll go in and bring him out, Suabo said. As Suabo walked a bit further in, Xiao Wu squawked loudly, silly, silly. Suabo earnestly replied, Xiao Wu, Uncle isn't silly. Without realizing it, Suabo had wandered a bit further. Suddenly, she heard a clear sound and instinctively looked up, only to see a pair of familiar eyes staring at her. Suabo, you finally came. I knew you'd come to get Xiao Wu. Suabo shuddered in fear and was about to shout when Mu Qingxin grabbed her arm. Just as Suabo was about to scream, Mu Qingxin covered her mouth. What's wrong, Suabo? You can't be happy to see Auntie? Mu Qingxin didn't know that Su Ishan was just outside the woods. She twisted Subao's face to face her. Suabo, Auntie lost her baby. Don't you think you should take responsibility? Suabo shook her head, whimpering. If anyone asks, you must admit it was your fault and say good things about Auntie, understand? Unexpectedly, Suabo suddenly bit down hard on Mu Qingxin's arm. Mu Qingxin yelped in surprise and instinctively raised her hand to slap Suabo. Just as the slap was about to land, the red string on Subao's wrist emitted a faint glow, guiding Subao's hand to strike Mu Qingxin instead. In the next moment, Mu Qingxin was sent flying, crashing into the bushes. At the same time, Suabo was scooped up by her uncle. Su Ishan looked at Mu Qingxin with cold suspicion. Suabo thought, I didn't use that much force. How did she get thrown like that? Suabo, are you all right? Su Ishan asked coldly, glaring at Mu Qingxin. How dare you hit Suabo? He held Suabo and stepped forward. Mu Qingxin panicked. Damn it, when did Su Ishan get here? She quickly waved her hands. Mr. Su, you've misunderstood. I'm Subao's mother too. How could I hit her? Su Ishan covered Subao's ears with his hand and pressed her little head against his chest, shielding her from the scene. He stepped on Mu Qingxin's face, causing her to scream in pain. Mr. Su, please spare me. I was wrong. Su Ishan followed up with another kick to Mu Qingxin's face, coldly saying, get lost. The parrot in the tree fluttered over, and Mu Qingxin, terrified, covered her face and ran away without making a sound. After driving Mu Qingxin away, Su Ishan continued to try and coax the parrot with Suabo, but no matter what they did, they couldn't win over the bird. Su Ying'er, Su Yuefei, and Su Luo, having noticed that Suabo hadn't returned for a long time, came to the backyard and witnessed the bizarre scene of a grown man and a child trying to placate a parrot. Once they understood the situation, they finally realized that Subao's insistence on returning to the Lin family was because of this parrot. Su Ying'er snidely remarked, I really give up on you, old 8. You can't even coax a parrot, useless. Sure enough, the parrot in the tree started singing, old 8, 1,000-year turtle, old 8, loves to eat poo. Su Ishan pointed at the bird, if you're so great, you try. Su Ying'er raised her arm, watch me. He clapped his arm and called out, signaling the parrot to perch on his arm. Suabo widened her eyes, thinking her fifth uncle looked like a gorilla. Su Yuefei's mouth twitched, and Su Luo, crossing his arms, commented, it's just coaxing a parrot, and he's devolved himself to the ancestral level. Suabo covered her mouth and giggled, curiously watching her fifth uncle. To her, he looked like a fierce fire-breathing dragon, but didn't seem that scary. The little girl secretly observed her uncles. Her youngest and third uncles were quite gentle, one refined and elegant, the other warm like the sun. Her fourth uncle seemed scholarly but had the aura of a villain. These were her mother's brothers, and Suabo seemed to like them. But as soon as she noticed Su Luo's gaze, she quickly turned her head, pretending nothing had happened. Su Luo smirked, thinking the little girl was really timid. Old 5, don't waste your effort. Only Suabo can get that parrot down. The little girl tilted her head, coaxing the parrot, which was about to land on her shoulder when suddenly, Madame Lin's voice called out, brother-in-law, you're all here. The startled parrot changed direction, and Suabo instinctively moved closer to Su Ishan. Lin Feng cheerfully suggested, you can't be too gentle with this bird. Give it a sedative, and it'll come down. Su Ishan coldly said, we don't need your help here, please leave. Su Ichen waved his hand, and the black-suited bodyguards immediately rushed forward, dragging the Lin family members out. The two elders kept shouting, this is our own villa. Little Suabo continued to coax the parrot, uncle isn't a bad guy, Xiao Wu, come over here, we're leaving. If you don't come down, you won't see Suabo again. Finally, the parrot flapped over, stretched out its claws, and landed on Su Ishan's head. Su Ishan's mouth twitched, and while the parrot was distracted, he grabbed its foot. Outside the villa, the Lin family saw them coming out and immediately approached. Now, he had to find a breakthrough point with Suabo. Suabo, Dad may be strict sometimes, but it's all for your own good. Su Ying'er suddenly rushed over, grabbed Lin Feng's neck, and slammed him hard against the villa door. The sound was as crisp as a watermelon hitting the ground. What the heck is wrong with you? You don't deserve to be Subao's dad. Su Ishan held Suabo, fifth brother, take your time, we'll wait for you in the car. Su Yinga grabbed Lin Feng's hair and repeatedly slammed his head against the wall. If you can't be a good dad, then don't be a dad at all. With that, he kicked the man in his weakest spot. The next second, Lin Feng's screams echoed throughout the villa area. Su Yinga tossed Lin Feng to the ground like a dead dog and walked away. Madam Lin ran over to Lin Feng's side. "Son, are you okay? Mom will call an ambulance right now." Old Master Lin immediately stopped her. "Call an ambulance. We don't even have money for treatment." Madam Lin was heartbroken. "Son, just endure it, the pain will pass soon." Just then, a group of people suddenly burst in from outside. "Boss Lin, you owe us 80 million, when are you going to pay it back?" It turned out these were debt collectors, and they began to surround the Lin family. Old Master Lin shouted, "What are you trying to do? Do you know who we are? We are the in-laws of the prestigious Su family of the capital." In response, they only got the exhaust fumes from the departing Su family's car. The collectors laughed. "What a big name, huh? Look, the Su family didn't even acknowledge you." "If you can't pay up, hand over the house and get lost," said the leader with yellow hair, waving his hand. His followers immediately charged forward. "If you knew this would happen, why did you act the way you did? You deserve to be in this situation," they mocked. In the car, Su Chen coldly stared at his phone and sent a message, ensuring that the Lin family would suffer endlessly. Su Bao quietly sat in the car, holding her stuffed bunny in one arm and her parrot, Xiao Wu, in the other. Old Master Su softened his tone, trying to appear kind. "Su Bao, let's go home now. Our home is in the capital, and we'll be taking a plane soon." Suddenly, Su Bao asked, "Grandpa, can we also take Mom's ashes home?" Old Master Su nodded, feeling heartbroken. "Of course, we will take her home with us." Finally, Su Bao felt relieved, happy that she could bring her mom home. The Su family had chartered a private jet. Su Bao looked out at the sky, feeling as if the clouds were flying alongside her. She pressed her face against the airplane window, staring outside. Su Yuefei smiled warmly. "Su Bao, what are you looking at?" Su Bao turned her head. "Third uncle, are we in the sky now?" Su Ishan nodded. "Yes, we are on the plane." Su Bao suddenly asked, "Is Mom here too? Isn't Mom supposed to be in the sky after she died? Will we see her later?" Su Bao missed Mom so much. Everyone fell silent, turning to look outside, tears quietly welling up in their eyes. Dr. Su held Su Bao in his arms. "Su Bao, go to sleep. When you sleep, you can see Mom in your dreams." Su Bao responded with a soft millimeter, nestling into Dr. Su's arms, tears quietly falling. "Uncle lied too," she thought. "I've slept so many times, but I never saw Mom." Unknowingly, Su Bao fell asleep, the red string on her wrist emitting a faint glow that was barely noticeable. In Su Bao's dream, her body felt light, as if she was flying in the air, surrounded by fluffy white clouds like cotton candy. She carefully reached out, picked a bit, and put it in her mouth. Her eyes lit up. It was sweet. Just then, she heard a gentle and familiar voice behind her. "Su Bao." Su Bao's eyes widened as she quickly turned around. She saw her mom standing not far behind her, looking at her with tears in her eyes. Su Bao rushed over and was tightly embraced by her mom. Su Jinyu gently patted her little head. "Su Bao, be good. From now on, Grandpa and your uncles are your family. Be happy, okay? And Grandma is not well. Can you take good care of her for Mom?" Su Bao's tears fell like beads. "I know, Mom. I will take good care of Grandma." Su Jinyu smiled, wanting to say more, but her body began to emit a faint glow and gradually became transparent. "Su Bao, Mom loves you, always and forever." As Su Bao slept, she mumbled "Mom" in her sleep, her little face streaked with tears. Nearby, there was someone invisible to everyone else. This time, the master didn't owe her mom anything. The plane landed at the Kyoto International Airport. Seeing Su Bao still asleep, old Master Su gave a longing look. Su Ishan gently picked her up and tiptoed out. Afraid of waking her, he maintained his bent posture. At that moment, the the parrot suddenly squawked, "Kidnapper! Kidnapper!" Suabo immediately opened her eyes. They all looked speechlessly at the glowing green parrot, while the little girl blinked her confused eyes, looking a bit adorably dazed. Dr. Su hugged Suabo. "Sweetie, we're in Kyoto now. We're almost home." Still dazed, Suabo nodded blankly. The Su family's cars were already waiting outside the airport, for extended Rolls-Royces lined up neatly, attracting the attention of passers-by. "Oh my gosh, take a picture! Whose princess is this? How lucky to be born into such a family! What a grand entrance!" As everyone was talking, they saw 8 tall and imposing men walking out. Leading them was an old man, and one of the men was holding a little girl with a green parrot perched on his shoulder. At that moment, the parrot was excitedly singing, "Cheong ha ha, Yasha cha. Harry Potter riding a broomstick, sorry. Sorry." The parrot's behavior was a bit out of place for the scene. The faces of the 8 men turned dark, and they quickly got into the cars with the little girl. The long limousine slowly drove away from the airport. A reporter said, "Wow, we really witnessed something today. Look at those for extended Rolls-Royces. What kind of family is this?" Compared to Subao's treatment, the Lin family seemed quite pitiful. The Lin family's bankruptcy was thorough, unlike other companies that go bankrupt where the CEO might still have a bit of money to buy a small house. The Lin family's assets were all seized, leaving them homeless. Old Mrs. Lin was utterly breathless, feeling it's too outrageous. She enjoyed her life but forgot about her ungrateful grandchildren. Mu Qingqing was increasingly jealous and bitter. After scheming for 2 years to become Mrs. Lin, she ended up like this. "I refuse to let my life end like this. I will not give up." A malicious look flashed in her eyes as she posted on a social media platform, claiming, "Su family's little princess is evil-hearted, pushed her stepmother down the stairs, causing her to miscarry twice and nearly die from hemorrhage. Yet the culprit rides a luxury car back to the capital in high spirits." Meanwhile, the car quickly arrived at the Su family estate. Despite being mature for her age, Suabo was still a 3.5-year-old child. She looked at the estate in shock. "Is this the castle where Mom grew up?" she asked her uncle. Her little uncle's nose tingled with emotion as he nodded. "Yes, it's also Subao's castle from now on. Old Master Su instructed the servants, Suabo is now our little lady, our precious Su." 2 rows of servants stood on either side of the estate entrance, their faces beaming with smiles to welcome the little girl. The young lady was finally home. Old Master Su, worried about what to call her, quickly decided to give the little girl a proper name. He cheerfully took Suabo by the hand. "Suabo, let Grandpa show you your room." Suabo nodded and replied, "Okay." Upstairs, Suabo had never seen such a princess-like room. She looked up and asked seriously, "Grandpa, is this really my room? It's so big." Dr. Su, standing nearby, asked, "How do you like it, Suabo?" Suabo nodded vigorously, "I like it, thank you, Grandpa." "Thank you, little uncle." Dr. Su patted her head, "No need to thank us, Suabo. When your brothers and sister come home from school, you can play with them, okay?" Suabo looked puzzled, so Dr. Su explained, "Suabo, you have 3 older brothers and 1 older sister. They are your big uncle's kids. We think you need companions your age to grow up with." Suabo nodded repeatedly. She suddenly looked up and asked, "Little uncle, can you help me pick out some gifts? I want to give them to my brothers and sister." Her eye sparkled with anticipation. She was thrilled to have siblings. Outside the Su family estate, a graceful woman holding a little girl's hand approached. The girl was carrying 2 exquisite dolls. The woman instructed, Han, when you see your sister Suabo, remember to give her one of the dolls, okay?" Han immediately threw a tantrum. "No, I want both. All the toys are mine." She then ran toward the estate without looking back. The woman, feeling helpless, turned to the dawdling little boy behind her. "Suzishi, hurry up. Why are you dawdling? Suabo is at home." Suzishi pouted, "I don't want another sister. Han already cries and complains all the time. I don't need another one. With that, he also walked off. Han ran to her room, grabbed her dolls, and angrily threw them on the floor, flinging them around. I don't care. Even if I break the dolls, I won't give them to her. Outside the door, Suabo gathered her courage and knocked on Han's door. Hesitantly, she called out, "Sister, I'm Suabo." Suabo came to give her sister a gift. Han suddenly opened the door and pushed her away. "Go away, you annoying brat. Who wants your stupid stuff?" Caught off guard, Suabo fell backward. Grandpa Su suppressed his anger and said, Han, your sister came to see you to make friends. How can you hit her?" Han, who was very spoiled and would cry at the slightest harsh word, immediately teared up. "I don't want to give my doll to my sister." Suzeling's wife, Weiwan, hearing the commotion, came upstairs and quickly said, "Dad, calm down, Han is still young and doesn't understand." Grandpa Su scolded, "If she's young and spoiled, I've said it more than once. How do you teach your children? If she's this unruly at a young age, how will she survive in society?" Weiwan lowered her head. "I understand." Grandpa Su, angry, took Suabo by the hand and left. Weiwan felt uneasy and thought Grandpa Su's words were too harsh. "I'll teach my own children. Why does he have to interfere? Girls should be pampered. What's wrong with a bit of indulgence?" Weiwan gently patted Han's head. Han, don't cry, dear. Mommy will buy you a new doll." Grandpa Su took Suabo back to his room. The parrot, seeing Suabo return, flapped its wings trying to fly over, but was restrained by its leg chain. Suabo comforted it. "Xiao Wu, be good. Once Uncle finishes your room, you'll be free." Seeing the little girl softly comforting the parrot, Grandpa Su felt a pang of sorrow. "Suabo, your sister is usually like this. Don't be too upset." Suabo didn't understand why adults had to give away things they liked out of politeness. "My things are my own," she thought. Suabo smiled. "It's okay, Grandpa. I understand how my sister feels. I don't like giving away my things either." Grandpa Su was stunned. How could someone so young understand so much? At that moment, Grandpa Su noticed a painting. "Did you draw this?" he asked. Subao's face lit up with focus and she nodded, "Yes. Suabo loves to draw. I used to draw a lot when I lived with my dad." "What did you draw? Can you tell Grandpa about it?" Suabo was explaining her drawing. This is a story about two kids exploring a magical forest. Grandpa Su thought to himself that if Suabo could learn from a great master, maybe she could really improve her skills. As they were happily looking at the painting, a servant's voice came from behind. "Sir, little miss, the madam has returned." Grandpa Su patted Subao's head. "Let's go, Suabo. Let's go see your grandma." Downstairs, Suzeling was pushing a wheelchair. The moment the old madam looked up, she saw a delicate little girl being led down by Grandpa Su. Suabo broke free from Grandpa Su's hand and leaned over the railing to look down. The old madam's heart was overwhelmed. Seeing Suabo, she was instantly choked with emotion and tears welled up in her eyes. Suabo looked just like her daughter when she was young. The old madam couldn't hold back her tears as Suabo ran to her. "Grandma!" Suabo called out. The old madam embraced Suabo, crying uncontrollably. "My little Suabo, you've had a hard time these past years." Suabo promised her mom to take good care of her grandma and be filial. The old lady cried even harder, and Suabo gently patted her back. "Don't cry, Grandma. Be good, don't cry." Upstairs, Han came out of her room and saw her grandma and Suabo hugging. Angry, she ran back upstairs. As she passed Subao's room, she heard strange noises. Caw caw, Harry Potter riding a broomstick. Caw caw. Her curiosity piqued, she opened the door and saw a green parrot perched on a stand. Her eyes lit up. What a beautiful parrot, Han thought. Xiao Wu, seeing Han rushing over, squawked in alarm, "Brat, help me." Hearing this, Wei-wan frowned, thinking, how does this parrot talk so rudely? Han, what are you doing? Let's go downstairs, Grandma is waiting for us. Han, still upset, replied, no, I want it. Wei-wan had no choice but to gently persuade her, this is your sister's parrot. Mommy will buy you one later, okay? Han, still throwing a tantrum, refused, no, I want this one. She climbed onto a chair and reached out to grab Xiao Wu. Startled, Xiao Wu flapped its wings desperately, but Han managed to grab it by the neck. Xiao Wu was terrified and tried to escape. Han struggled to control the parrot, which scratched her arm, making her cry out in pain. Downstairs, everyone heard the commotion. Suabo immediately ran upstairs. Grandpa Su, realizing what was happening, angrily scolded Sibling, what have you been doing? You need to spend more time educating the kids. Sibling, who was enjoying his plants, turned red and couldn't say a word. Everyone rushed upstairs, and Han was angrily shaking the parrot. Listen to me, or I'll hit you. Suabo saw this scene as she entered, her face turning red with anger. She rushed forward, shouting, stop! You can't hit Xiao Wu. Han, seeing Suabo trying to take the parrot, felt her possession was being stolen and pushed Suabo. It's mine. Xiao Wu is mine. Suabo, frustrated, pushed back, Xiao Wu is Subao's friend, not yours. No one expected the usually well-behaved Suabo to react this way. Tears welled up in Subao's eyes, but she stubbornly kept quiet. Wei-wan, both anxious and angry, instinctively scolded, if you don't want to give the parrot to your sister, you should say so. You can't hit people. Suabo, with tightly pursed lips and red-rimmed eyes, responded, she hit me first. If she hits you, can you hit back? Don't you know kids should be polite and humble? Enough! Grandpa Su's angry voice interrupted Wei-wan. Han, do you understand what it means to be polite and humble? Clearly, she took the parrot and hit people, yet you're scolding Suabo. Wei-wan saw that Madame Su was hurriedly pushing her wheelchair to comfort Suabo, without showing any concern for Han. Feeling cold-hearted, Wei-wan thought, Han got hit, but no one cares about her. They are being too much today. Tenderly, Wei-wan pushed Han, saying, Han Bao, be good. Let's go. She took Han and left without saying a word. Grandpa Su was furious. Are you saying I can't even talk about this? Do you not see the problem? Sibling, after holding back for a while, finally said, Dad, don't be angry. I'll handle it. This only made Grandpa Su angrier, but now was not the time for more arguing. He hurried to check on the situation. Suabo was holding Xiao Wu, tears in her eyes. It was Han who hit Xiao Wu first. Madame Su, feeling heartbroken, comforted her, Suabo, don't cry. Suabo is Grandma's good baby. In Han's room, Wei-wan saw her beloved daughter's arm scratched and bleeding. Furious, she shouted, Sibling, is this how you act as a father? Clearly, our Han was bullied. Look at her arm, it's covered in blood. She wouldn't have been scratched if she didn't try to get the parrot. Is this how you educate the children? Wei-wan, recalling past grievances, felt heartbroken and thought, what did I do wrong? Is it wrong to care for my child? Why is everyone targeting Han and me? Without saying much, Sibling turned and left. Suichen, leaning against the wall, saw Sibling come out and said coldly, second brother, you should settle your issues soon. I'm only worried about the impact of a divorce on the kids. Think it over. If you need help, let me know. With that, Suichen turned and left. At the dining table, Grandpa Su brought up the matter of Subao's name. Everyone brainstormed together. Suabo said, Mommy said Xu is a type of grain, and after husking, it's called Xiao Nu Su. It's adaptable, so she named me Suabo. The little one spoke in a cute, earnest voice, as if she had memorized her mother's words exactly. Madame Su felt a pang of sadness and thought, Subao's name is perfect. Since Mommy's name is Su Jinyu, let's keep the surname Su for Su Bao too, okay? Su Bao happily nodded and shouted, surname Su, same as Mommy's surname Su. Grandpa Su laughed and asked, what should come after the Su? Su Bao raised her small hand and eagerly answered, Su Bao. Everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. Suichen suggested, how about just Su? Su Bao shook her head, no, it doesn't sound good. It seemed like calling a couple when they heard it. Everyone found it a bit tricky to keep both Su and Bao. They decided to think about it some more over time. Grandpa Su then asked, Su Bao, you're 3.5 years old, right? Su Bao thought for a moment, yes, I think so. Mommy said Su Bao is like the 3 to 15 anti-fraud campaign. Madam Su paused, 3 to 15? That's a week from now. So, Su Bao will be 4 next week. Let's throw Su Bao a birthday party and get a huge cake, okay? Su Bao's eyes lit up, really? Han, seeing all the attention on Su Bao, got upset. She slapped the table and burst into tears, I don't want to eat with Su Bao. None of you pay attention to me. Su Zishi, Su Huwen, and Su Huwen, the 3 little boys, all rolled their eyes simultaneously. Here we go again. Why does nobody care about Han? Kids are sensitive, and ignoring her is practically emotional abuse. Wei Wan's heart ached. Han, be good. Mommy is here. Mommy will pay attention to Han, okay? But Han, grabbing her bowl, threw the food out and continued crying, I don't want her to eat with me. I don't want a little sister. This reminded Su Bao of her father's angry face and not allowing her to eat. Frightened, Su Bao bit her lip. Grandpa Su, suppressing his anger, said, who told you to throw the bowl on the table? Second son, how are you raising this child? If she doesn't want to eat, she can leave. Seeing her grandpa so angry, Han immediately looked at her mother. Su Zilin, without saying a word, picked up Han and tried to leave, but Han threw a tantrum, making him even angrier. He grabbed Han by the back of his shirt and carried her upstairs. Han cried even louder, no, I don't want to. Wei Wan hurriedly said, Su Zilin, what are you doing? Is this necessary? After saying this, Wei Wan took the crying Han to their room. Just then, Han's grandmother called via video chat. Wei Wan explained everything, and Han's grandmother angrily replied, see, I told you so. When Han was the only girl in the Su family, she was always pampered like a princess. Now with the little girl here, they wouldn't spoil Han as much anymore. Wei Wan felt even more irritated. Mom, please stop. Han's grandmother's eyes widened, we can't talk about it. You might not know, but when she was in the southern city, she pushed her stepmother down the stairs, causing a miscarriage. With such backing, she could get away with anything. She made a mistake, yet the Ming family went bankrupt because of her. Han's grandmother continued to rant. Wei Wan frowned, what are you talking about? Han's grandmother said, you don't believe me? I'll send you the expose video. Watch it yourself. She hung up, and soon Wei Wan received a video. Seeing the revelations in the video, Wei Wan felt disgusted. How could the Su family bring back such a child? And Han overheard every word of their conversation. Finally, it was Su Bao's birthday. Su Bao, dressed in a beautiful dress and holding a slightly worn-out bunny, was led downstairs by Suichen. Following them were the Su brothers, with no one noticing the soul lurking behind them. Leaning against the stair railing, a figure smirked at Su Bao, just in time. Everyone's faces were full of admiration. This is the Su family's little princess. What a beautiful dress, such an exquisite little girl. And cold-faced CEO Suichen himself is holding her hand. She is indeed cherished. On the second floor, Han's grandmother fanned the flames. Isn't that the limited edition dress by GYFY? I heard there's only one in the country. If it weren't for Su Bao, it would have been Han's. Han, standing on the second floor and watching Suabo being adored, turned and said, "Mom, I want that dress too." Wei-wan felt sad. Han, be good. Mommy will buy you another one later. Han threw a tantrum. "No, I want that one. Grandma said it should have been mine." Wei-wan wanted to take Han back to the room temporarily, but Han suddenly rushed out, which made Wei-wan anxious. "Wait!" Meanwhile, in the garden, Suabo happily handed a piece of cake to her brother, Sugawon. "For you." At that moment, following his father's instructions, Sugawon was watching over Suabo. His small face was cold, with a slightly cool expression. Her brother, sincerely looking at his book, didn't even lift his head. "I don't want it." "Okay, you don't want it, then Suabo will eat it." Then, a voice sounded again in her ear. "Hey, little backpack, don't worry about him, come over here. The master will teach you a little trick." Suddenly, a small figure rushed straight towards the garden. Annoyed, Han grabbed Subao's dress without a word. "Give me back my dress." Suabo stumbled from the pool, and the cake in her hand fell onto her dress. She was stunned. "This is the dress my uncle gave me." The next second, Han swung her small hand and slapped Subao's face. "What's mine is mine. Han stole my toy and my dress, and even hit me." Suabo immediately got angry, raised her small hand, and slapped Han back. Han started crying loudly. "You hit me! How dare you hit me!" Han wanted to hit Suabo again, but Sugawon quickly grabbed Han's wrist. He looked at Suabo, immediately checking if she was okay. Suabo shook her head. "I'm fine." Han's sharp, penetrating cry startled the adults, who were laughing and chatting nearby. They all paused in surprise. "Why are the two Su family little princesses fighting?" Suabo bit her lip, her eyes filled with tears, but she stubbornly refused to cry. "It was sister who hit me first." Wei-wan hurried over. "My daughter wouldn't hit anyone," she said. Sugawon, looking at his calm, uncrying sister, suddenly spoke up. "Second aunt, it was Han who hit her first. If you don't believe me, ask others." Han cried even harder. "She hit me first, Suabo took my dress and hit me. Suabo is a bad kid." The guests started to murmur, "So Suabo is wearing Han's dress. This child just returned to the Su family and is already taking things. Could those online rumors be true?" Wei-wan pointed at Shui Enai and asked, "You tell us, who hit whom first?" Shui Enai, feeling left out because Suabo didn't give her any cake, suddenly blurted out, "It was Suabo who hit Han first." Sugawon turned his head to look at Shui Enai. "What did you just say? Say it again." Everyone started believing Shui Enai. "Sugawon, don't scare Shui Enai, she's just telling the truth. Yeah, if Suabo keeps acting like this, she'll be spoiled." The murmurs grew louder. Suabo bit her lip stubbornly, her eyes brimming with tears, but she didn't cry. "I didn't do anything wrong, they're lying. My uncle bought me this dress, and Han hit me first. Why do the adults always blame me even when I'm not at fault? Is the grown-up world really that different from a kid's?" Wei-wan shouted at Suabo, "Enough. You were the one who hit first, so what else do you have to say?" At that moment, Suichen and Grandpa Su arrived. Suichen asked coldly, "Did Suabo hit first? Did you see it with your own eyes?" Grandpa Su looked at Wei-wan with a stern expression. "I believe Suabo isn't that kind of child." "Who said Suabo was wrong? Step forward and let me see." Grandpa Su was already holding back, not wanting to scold Wei-wan in front of others, but Wei-wan thought he was too biased. "Dad, we have to be reasonable. Han might be a little spoiled, but she doesn't hit people." Grandpa Su, now furious, retorted, "Do you really not know whether she hits people or not, Wei-wan? The whole situation has escalated. I know what's going on. Ever since Suabo came back, you've all been targeting Han. What exactly has Han done wrong?" At this moment, Suichen quietly told the butler behind him, "Uncle Nai, go get the projector and show the surveillance footage from the courtyard." Let everyone see what really happened. Wei-wan suddenly felt a wave of panic. They're actually going to check the surveillance? Are they really trying to corner Hanan today? Everyone looked at the big screen and saw Hanan run up to Suabo and say, "It's mine. It's mine." Then, she slapped Suabo across the face. So it was really Hanan who hit first, but didn't Shuai just say that Suabo was the one who hit first? How did it get turned around like this? Everyone turned to look at Shuai, whose face turned red with embarrassment. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to be caught in a lie with no way out. She hid behind her mom and started crying. Shuai's mom awkwardly laughed it off, saying, "Oh, kids might just remember things wrong." But someone in the crowd said, "Shuai is old enough to remember things, she must have done it on purpose to mislead everyone." Wei-wan, feeling upset, said, "How could you do this? Hanan is still so young. What about her pride? How much will this hurt her?" Suichen, seeming to lose patience, asked Hanan, "Do you think what you did was right? What should you say to your sister?" Hanan glanced at Suabo, then quickly looked away. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, but when she looked up again, she accidentally made eye contact with Suabo. Hanan started crying and shook her head. "I don't want to say sorry. I don't want to." Wei-wan's heart ached at the sight and she blurted out, "How can you criticize a child in front of everyone like this? How can she handle it?" Sibling quickly stepped in to stop his wife. "Wei-wan, you'd better keep quiet, or you'll have to go back and sign the papers now." Suabo looked at her sister with a bit of envy. Hanan probably isn't a bad person. She's different from Suabo, she has a mother who loves her. A child who's loved by their mother should be happy and carefree, right? But why does Hanan always seem so unhappy? Dr. Su patted Hanan's little head and asked, "Hanan, can you tell everyone why you hit Suabo?" Hanan sniffled and said, "I wanted the dress. If Suabo wasn't here, the dress would have been mine." Hanan's grandmother quickly jumped in, saying, "Oh dear, if you wanted something, you should have just told us. It's just a dress. If Suabo likes it, she can have it." It's not like Hanan knew any better. Suichen was speechless. "What do you mean by saying Suabo can have it just because she likes it? Did you tell Hanan that the dress was hers?" At that moment, Suichen took the file that his assistant handed over. He held up the file and said, "This is the custom order data for the starry dress. Everyone can see that it was made specifically for Subao's height and size. Hanan is taller than Suabo, so there's no way she could wear it. The dress was always meant for Suabo." Hanan's grandmother got flustered and, while trying to stay polite, was clearly seething inside. Everyone paused, realizing, oh right, Hanan can't even fit into that dress. How could it ever have been hers? Feeling embarrassed, Hanan's grandmother was filled with resentment. She said, "I never said the dress was Hanan's. I only mentioned that Suabo has one, and Hanan doesn't. This whole mess is because you're all favoring Suabo over Hanan." Suichen smirked and flipped to the second page of the custom order contract. Of course, Suabo had her starry dress made, but Hanan has one too. This page shows the data for Hanan's dress. The crowd's perception of Hanan's grandmother shifted slightly. They thought, kids don't understand these things on their own. An adult must have said something to make her think the dress was hers. Someone glanced over and gasped, "Hanan's dress is 500,000 yuan more expensive than Subao's. You can't call that favoritism. I wonder what kind of lessons her mom's teaching her." Wei-wan felt her face burn with embarrassment, unable to find a way out of the situation. Dr. Su walked over to Hanan and gently said, "Hanan, do you understand now? You have your own dress. If you want one like Subao's, your uncle and grandpa can also have one custom-made for you." Hanan, still sniffling, replied, "I understand," and shyly apologized to Suabo. "Sorry, Suabo." Suabo kindly responded, "It's okay, Hanan." At this point, Grandpa Su asked Suji when to take Hanan home first, then turned to Wei-wan and said sternly, "Go home and reflect on your actions." Han's grandmother quickly tried to smooth things over, saying, "Oh, come on, don't be angry. Wei-wan didn't mean anything by it. She's just too concerned about you." Grandpa Su gave a cold laugh, clearly not interested in her attempts to make peace. Wei-wan, deeply embarrassed, said, "Mom, stop talking. Let's just go." As they left, Wei-wan wiped away her tears, feeling wronged. She thought, even if Han did something wrong, I'm her mother, it's my job to discipline her. What right do they have to tell me how to raise my child? And anyway, isn't this all because the Su family always plays favorites? Meanwhile, outside the Su family estate, Lin Feng and his wife were arguing with the security guard. "You've got it wrong. We're Su Bao's parents, and we're here to celebrate her birthday." The guard told them they couldn't enter without an invitation. Lin Feng showed his ID, saying, "I really am Su Bao's dad. My name is Lin Feng." Wei-wan, still fuming inside, noticed the commotion at the gate and thought to herself, so that's Su Bao's real dad. Lin Feng looked exactly like the photo she'd seen in the rumors. Wei-wan's heart burned with resentment. Why should Su Bao get to live so happily when Han's been hurt so badly? Today, everyone's going to see what kind of kid Su Bao really is. When they were allowed inside, the security guard hesitated for a moment, then said, "Shouldn't we let the old man know?" Wei-wan frowned and asked, "What, my words don't count anymore?" Madame Su kindly said, "Su Bao, make a wish." Su Bao clasped her hands together, closed her eyes, and with a heart full of sincerity, wished for her mom to be happy in heaven. She also wished she could see her mom again, that her grandma would get healthier, and that her oldest uncle's business would thrive. She thought of everyone, her grandparents, her uncles, but forgot to wish for herself. Then she happily opened her eyes. Dr. Su lifted Su Bao up so she could blow out the candles. Su Bao took a deep breath, puffed up her cheeks like a little pufferfish, and blew them out with a whoosh. Everyone around her clapped and cheered, congratulating her on her birthday. Just then, a voice cut through the celebration, "Su Bao, happy birthday." "Dad, sorry I'm late." In the garden, Lin Feng and Mu Qingxin were rushing towards them. Su Bao's stepmom and dad had come to bring her gifts. But the moment Su Bao saw them, her smile vanished, and she pressed her lips together in a tight line. Grandpa Su's face darkened with anger as he shouted, "Who let you in? Get out!" But then, Lin Feng and Mu Qingxin suddenly dropped to their knees with a thud. Lin Feng looked regretful and said, "Su Bao, it was all Dad's fault in the past. I didn't care about you enough. That day, I was only upset because your little brother in your stepmom's belly died, which is why I lost control. You know I never hit you otherwise." Mu Qingxin's voice was soft and weak as she added, "Su Bao, please come back. I don't blame you for what happened to the baby." Su Bao's lips quivered, and she bravely stood up for herself. "Dad, you're lying. You did hit me before. You've always hit me." Lin Feng gritted his teeth and said, "I'm your father. That was just discipline." The crowd exchanged glances between the Su family with Li Lin Feng and Mu Qingxin. It quickly became clear to everyone, these were the people from the online rumors, Su Bao's dad and stepmom. Did they show up just to cause trouble? They knew it was the child's birthday and still picked this moment. Someone in the crowd commented, "You can't really blame him. He was probably so distraught over the loss of her child that he acted out. It's understandable." The people had only heard that Lin Feng hit Su Bao, they didn't know how serious it was, so they found it understandable. But Su Yina, who had a fiery temper, clenched his teeth and asked, "Big brother, why haven't we kicked them out yet? Are we waiting for the new year?" Su Yichen raised his hand to stop him. "If we just kick them out, we're letting them off too easy. I was planning to deal with this after Su Bao's birthday, but since they brought themselves here, let's handle it now." With her hands in her pockets, he confidently walked towards Mu Qingxin, radiating authority. "Mu Qingxin, are you saying it was Su Bao's fault that you lost your baby? Did you think just because the neighbor's house didn't have cameras, you could lie without consequence?" Mu Qingxin suddenly panicked. "Mr. Su, what are you talking about? I don't understand any of this. At that moment, Xiao Wu, the parrot, flew onto Su Bao's arm. Su Chen glanced at the parrot and said, "Su Bao, bring Xiao Wu over here." Obediently, Su Bao held Xiao Wu close, comforting it sweetly. "Don't worry, Xiao Wu, Uncle doesn't eat birds." Su Chen's stern expression softened slightly. He then ordered, "Xiao Wu, repeat what you heard that day." The parrot flapped its wings excitedly and then, in a perfect imitation of Mu Qingxin's voice, it said, "Su Bao, Auntie lost her baby. You need to take responsibility, okay? If anyone asks, you have to admit it was your fault and say nice things about Auntie, understand?" Mu Qingxin's face went pale with shock. This cursed bird had remembered everything she said. The crowd was equally stunned. How could this parrot sound exactly like Mu Qingxin? They began to question whether there was more to the story of her miscarriage. Mu Qingxin, seeing the skeptical looks from everyone, teared up and turned to Su Chen. "Mr. Su, how could you suspect me based on the word of a bird? What would I gain by framing Su Bao with my own child?" She acted convincingly, but Su Chen coldly responded, "Need me to remind you of what really happened that day?" Without hesitation, he projected a video from a USB drive. The video showed a heavily pregnant Mu Qingxin and Su Bao, who was holding a bunny and wearing a dirty dress, standing about half a meter away from Mu Qingxin. "Su Bao, listen to me and stand still, okay?" Su Bao obediently nodded, and then Mu Qingxin suddenly fell backward and tumbled down the stairs. The video clearly showed that Su Bao never even touched her. Mu Qingxin was stunned. How did they get this footage when the Lin family didn't have any surveillance cameras? Lin Feng, seeing the video, was even more shocked than Mu Qingxin. "Didn't you say Su Bao pushed you? What's going on?" Mu Qingxin was speechless, stammering, I don't know. I don't remember anything." Su Chen took the documents from Uncle Nai's hand and coldly said, "You don't remember, huh?" He pulled out a paper from the files and threw it in Lin Feng's face. "This is a notice from the medical board about a doctor who was punished for taking bribes to fake a miscarriage for Mu Qingxin. Your so-called miscarriage was premeditated, and the 2 instances of severe bleeding during the procedure were staged. Do you remember now?" Mu Qingxin, realizing she was exposed, collapsed to the ground. Lin Feng's eyes turned bloodshot. "Mu Qingxin, you wanted to leave me all along, didn't you? When you saw the Lin family struggling, you were afraid having a child would make it hard to find someone else, so you used Su Bao as an excuse to get rid of it. Even now, you still refuse to admit it?" Mu Qingxin stammered, "No, it's not true." But Lin Feng wasn't buying it. Deep down, he was furious, but he quickly realized that this could actually be his chance. "Su Bao, it's all Daddy's fault. I was deceived by the person I trusted the most, and that's why we had so many misunderstandings. From now on, I'll make it up to you, okay?" Su Chen, with a slight movement of his fingers, responded sarcastically, "You call what you did to Su Bao a misunderstanding?" Uncle Nai then brought out more documents and projected them onto the screen. They were Su Bao's medical records, clearly stating respiratory arrest, shock, fractures in the 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th left ribs, fracture of the humerus, fracture of the right arm, damage to the left foot requiring the amputation of the little toe, and a 3 cm wound with signs of tissue necrosis. Then, a video started playing, filmed secretly by a neighbor. In the video, Su Bao is wearing a dress, kneeling in the snow, while Lin Feng beats her with a wooden stick as thick as 2 fingers. The medical reports were just a few lines long, but they clearly showed how severely Su Bao was beaten. Everyone started glaring at Lin Feng with disgust. This wasn't discipline, it was a brutal beating. And this man called himself her father? Forcing a child to kneel in the snow? That's inhuman. He's more like a monster. Su Chen signaled to Uncle Nai to continue. Uncle Nai then displayed a wanted notice, stamped with an official seal. It revealed that the Lin family had been involved in a massive smuggling operation a year ago, and there was now solid evidence against them. The notice had been officially issued just yesterday. So, the Lin family wasn't ruined because of revenge from the Su family, they destroyed themselves. At this point, People started talking among themselves again, saying how disgusting it was that the fake news on the internet was spread by the Lin family. People like that don't deserve to live. Someone call the police and get him arrested. When Lin Feng heard this, he panicked. I was just trying to discipline Suabo. Without me, she wouldn't even be alive. The Su family is being ungrateful. Sui Chen looked down at Lin Feng coldly and said, Suabo isn't even your child. Here's the DNA test result, you're not her biological father. Lin Feng's mind went blank, his first thought was that his last hope was gone. Impossible. I'm not Subao's real father? I raised her for 3 years, and this is how she repays me? Desperate, Lin Feng's thoughts turned dark. If I'm going down, I'll take Suabo with me. I'll make the Su family regret this for the rest of their lives. With that, he charged at Suabo, but before he could reach her, Sui Chen kicked him away, sending him flying. A group of cops rushed in and restrained Mu Qingxin and pinned Lin Feng to the ground, handcuffed him, and threw him into the car. Lin Feng was filled with regret, thinking, if it wasn't for Mu Qingxin, I wouldn't have beaten Suabo that day. How did it come to this? As Lin Feng stewed over his fate, he suddenly snapped and kicked Mu Qingxin hard in the back. The unexpected blow sent Mu Qingxin's head crashing into the car door with a sickening thud. She screamed in pain, and within moments, blood started seeping from her head like watermelon juice. Mu Qingxin collapsed to the ground, lifeless from that single kick. Mu Qingxin's spirit slowly drifted out of her body, her expression blank at first. But then she realized she was dead and let out a shriek. Did I really just die from a kick? No way. I was supposed to marry a rich guy and live the high life. I can't die like this. Madame Su held Suabo close and said, let's go home. Everyone looked at Suabo with sympathy. Now that the truth was out, they felt guilty for how they had judged her before. Is Grandma worried about Suabo? It's okay, Grandma. Subao's fine, the little girl said with a sweet smile, pure and sincere. Even though Suabo was the one who had suffered the most, she was the first to comfort others. Madame Su's eyes filled with tears as Suabo, clutching a stuffed bunny, reached out with one small hand to pat her grandmother's head. Why are you crying, Grandma? Don't cry. Madame Su fought back her tears and nodded in response, trying to stay strong. Then, Sui Chen walked up to Suabo and asked her a question. Are you sad today? Suabo shook her head. I'm not sad. Dad made a mistake, not me. Dad should be the one feeling bad. Sui Chen straightened up. Even though Suabo was very young, she seemed to understand everything. Sui Chen's heart softened. He patted Subao's little head and realized Suabo was right. They had no more interest in continuing the birthday party. He raised his glass and smiled gracefully. Everyone, this birthday party is now over. Thank you all for coming. From today on, Suabo will be officially part of the Su family. We, the Su family, will make sure Suabo never suffers any more injustice. Everyone quickly agreed, saying Mr. Su was too kind and that it was an honor to attend the party. As they started to leave the Su family estate, they couldn't help but whisper about how lucky Suabo was to have the protection of the 8 powerful uncles. She really was the little princess. Shui Enai clung to her mom's dress, thinking about how dazzling Suabo looked in her starry dress, and felt even more envious of her. At that moment, Shui Enai's mom suddenly noticed that Master Lao was staying here and heard that he was considering taking on a young apprentice. Her eyes lit up with excitement. Master Lao was a prestigious traditional Chinese painting master who rarely made public appearances. If her daughter Shui Enai could be chosen, she'd be able to brag about it for a year. Shui Enai, Master Lao is here. Make sure to perform well. Shui Enai's eyes brightened. Mom, I understand. I'm talented in painting, and my work has even been included in the National Painting Institute. If Master Lao is taking on an apprentice, it should definitely be me. Shui Enai's mom led her over to Master Lao, casually asking, Master Lao, which lucky child caught your attention? Master Lao smiled and said, "It's a child who uses bold colors and has an extraordinary imagination. In all my years, this is the most promising young talent I've seen." Shui Enai's mom was overjoyed. She was sure Master Lao was talking about Shui Enai. The fact that he even came all this way just for her daughter made her feel a bit embarrassed. Shui Enai picked up on her mom's excitement and felt happy too. She decided to impress Master Lao. "Hello, Master Lao. I'm Lan Shui Enai. I really love your paintings, and you're my idol." Master Lao only just noticed her and said, "Thank you, little one." Master Lao seemed really happy. Shui Enai was about to say something else when Dr. Su and Suabo started walking over. Master Lao turned his head, recognizing them. "Mr. Su, is this the little one, Suabo?" Suabo nodded and walked over, lifting her chin confidently. She greeted him, "Hello, teacher. I'm Suabo." Master Lao was a bit surprised but then laughed heartily. Good, little Suabo. How old are you?" Suabo hesitated, sneaking a glance at the old man. She thought, this grandpa seems a little forgetful. Having just turned 4, Suabo naturally replied, "I'm 4. Master Lao suddenly felt like this little kid was looking down on him. What was going on? "Oh yes, you're right. Your teacher's a bit silly, isn't he?" Subao's eyes crinkled with laughter. "It's okay. Sometimes I act silly too." Shui Enai and her mom stood off to the side, watching. Shui Enai's jealousy grew stronger. Dr. Su mentioned that the elder was still waiting in the house for Master Lao, who was already excited to see Subao's work, so he decided to go along. Shui Enai was stunned when she heard this. "Aren't you going to take me as your little apprentice?" she asked anxiously, fidgeting with her fingers. Master Lao was surprised and looked at her, saying, "You're a good kid too, but I've got something to take care of right now." With that, Master Lao left with the Su family. Shui Enai's mom was furious inside. But even though she was upset, she had to hold it in. The Su family was indeed powerful, but Master Lao wasn't someone you could just hire with money. Trying to make the best of the situation, Shui Enai's mom reassured her, suggesting they could wait a bit. Upstairs in the Su family's villa, in the study, old Mr. Su told Suabo, "This is the greatest master in the field of painting in our country. Go ahead, call him teacher." Suabo obediently greeted, "Hello, teacher." The old man genuinely liked this polite little girl. "Suabo, can you tell me about these paintings?" Subao's face lit up as she eagerly nodded and began explaining her imaginative world. Suichen, watching the old man and the little girl leaning over the table, engrossed in the artwork and sharing laughs, couldn't help but relax. Suabo had finally found a friend, even if it was an old one. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, Sibling confronted his wife. "When you let Lin Feng in, didn't you? How long are you going to keep this up?" When didn't say much, but her accusation was clear. "Everything I've done has been for the child. As a father, why didn't you protect your own? Do you even know how pitiful Hanan is?" Sibling pursed his lips, staying silent as he slammed a divorce agreement on the table. Finally, he coldly said, "Let's get a divorce." Wei-wan was stunned. "What did you say?" But Sibling had already turned and walked out. Wei-wan, determined, thought to herself that she would never agree to a divorce. Meanwhile, Suabo happily escorted her new mentor out the door. The little girl was thrilled, feeling like she'd found a good friend, even though they were generations apart. She had already accepted this old friend into her heart, just as her grandpa had said she would. Suabo waved goodbye enthusiastically, and the elderly master smiled and waved back. He hadn't expected that this visit would lead him to such a bright and talented young apprentice. He was overjoyed. Sitting in the car, the master couldn't resist looking through the photos on his phone, all of which were of Subao's paintings. Just then, 2 people standing by the roadside caught his eye. Master Lao politely asked, "Excuse me, who are you?" The woman responded, "I'm Lan Shui Enai mother, the one who won first place in the National Children's Painting Competition." do you remember us? But Master Lao had no idea who Lan Shui Enai was. Shui Enai froze in shock. How could you not remember me? She thought. Weren't you going to take me as your student? But Master Lao got back into the car, saying, sorry, I've already taken on an apprentice named Suabo. You should know her. Before Shui Enai could process this, Master Lao's car had driven off. Both mother and daughter were left convinced that Suabo had only been accepted because they paid a lot of money. After saying goodbye to her new mentor, Suabo returned to her room, washed up, and changed into her pajamas, a fuzzy pink set with a hood that had long bunny ears, making her look extra adorable. Grandma Su watched her with a kind smile, thinking how mature yet heartbreakingly endearing this little one was. If anything happens, remember to press the bell by your bed. Suabo nodded and obediently said goodnight to her grandma. She watched as Grandma Su left the room. Just then, Ji Chang floated in. He leaned against the wall, recalling how the old man in the study had taken his little apprentice. Nowadays, even masters have competition, he thought. Little Suabo, how about I open your third eye today? Once it's open, you'll be able to see me, and I can teach you some magic, like throwing fireballs with a snap. Suabo turned her head. No way, I want to learn painting from my new mentor. That's what kids are supposed to do. Ji Chang snorted, and what else do you think kids should do? Suabo climbed into bed and started counting on her fingers: eat, sleep, paint, and play with Xiao Wu. So, Suabo, it's time for bed now, Ji Chang said, a bit frustrated. If it weren't for my promise to Su Jinyu, I wouldn't be here begging a little kid. Ji Chang moved closer, but Suabo turned away, facing the other side. Little Suabo, do you remember what your mom told you when she played with you on the rainbow slide in the sky? Didn't she say you should learn from your master so you could see her more often? Ji Chang asked. Suabo frowned. That day, it was you who played with me on the rainbow slide, not my mom. After my mom hugged me, she left. Ji Chang was stunned. How do you know that? Master is so silly. Even your big feet were showing. My mom's feet aren't that big, Suabo giggled. Ji Chang was caught off guard. No way. Did I really mess up like that? He thought, feeling embarrassed. Just when he was thinking Suabo might be tough to handle, the little girl suddenly asked, but master, if I learn the skills, can I really see my mom again? Of course. Ji Chang responded confidently. Suabo sat up straight, holding onto the blanket with a serious expression. All right, I'll learn from you then. This master seems even clumsier than Xiao Wu, but I'll forgive you for now. Ji Chang was a bit surprised by Subao's change of heart. He hadn't even figured out how to teach her yet. After thinking for a moment, he said, well, let's start by opening your third eye. The third eye is like a hidden eye that lets you see things ordinary people can't. Once it's open, you'll be able to see all sorts of stuff. Ah, no thanks. Suabo quickly pulled the blanket over her head. I don't want a third eye. I don't want to look like Erlangshan. That's so ugly. Ji Chang chuckled, don't worry. The third eye doesn't actually show up on your face. It stays hidden in your regular eyes, so you won't look any different. Suabo let out a sigh of relief. Okay, that's better. Now, let's practice together, Ji Chang continued. Focus your energy and repeat after me, Qi sinking to the Dantian, mind concentrating on the mystical eye, blah blah blah. Suabo repeated the words, then opened her eyes seriously. Suddenly, she saw a white figure appear in the room. Master, Suabo asked, why can't I see anything yet? Ji Chang floated in the air, lazily picking his ear. Opening the third eye isn't that easy. Even the most talented people take 49 days to get it right, he said, sniffing his fingers as he spoke. Suabo blinked and asked, Master, why are you playing with poop? Ji Chang laughed awkwardly, nonsense. When would I ever? Wait, you can see me? Ji Chang was shocked. Suabo had only chanted the spell once and had already succeeded. Her talent wasn't just extraordinary, it was downright freaky. Suabo's eyes widened as she looked around the room. There was a creepy lady hanging by the window, staring right at her. She pointed at her master and asked, "Who's that ugly lady? She's so scary looking." A strange glint flashed in Ji Chang's eyes. Although he was excited, he kept his cool. "This time, I've really hit the jackpot with this little apprentice. Let's see how powerful you are, my little treasure." The ugly ghost lady got angry, shouting, "You can insult me as a ghost, but you can't insult my looks." She lunged at them, furious. Ji Chang quickly instructed, "All right, Suabo, repeat after me, fierce ones, do not disturb, strike the mountain down." Suabo mimicked him, and jokingly saying, "I'm just passing by, no need to be so serious." The ghost was stunned, Ji Chang feeling this was way too much for a first lesson. He looked down at Suabo, who had only learned the spell once and already nailed it, thinking to himself, "I've really struck gold this time." Suddenly, a tiny gourd, no bigger than a fingernail, appeared in his hand. He tied it to the red string on Suabo's wrist. "Well done, Suabo. This soul charm is for you. You can use it to help master catch ghosts in the future." Suabo stared at the tiny gourd. "Why does master want to catch ghosts?" Ji Chang didn't answer and instead brushed off the question, telling Suabo to not worry about it. Suabo pouted, then turned to the ghost lady and asked, "Who are you, and why do you look like that?" The ghost struggled, unable to break free, and replied sadly, "I'm your second uncle's old co-worker from the construction site." "Didn't you know? I got punished for doing something bad." Suabo was taken aback. "What bad thing did you do to my second uncle?" The ghost lady didn't seem to have control over her own mouth, and she started spilling everything. "6 years ago, your second aunt offered me 20,000 yuan to sprinkle some salt in your uncle's tea. I did it, but right after I got the money, a huge piece of material fell from the construction site roof and crushed me to death." Suabo was puzzled. Why would anyone want to put salt in her uncle's tea? Ji Chang squinted his eyes and said, "The ugly auntie is going to sleep now. Little kids shouldn't ask too many questions." With that, he shoved the ghost into the tiny gourd. The red string on Suabo's wrist emitted a faint red glow before disappearing. Suabo looked at the little gourd in her hand and said to the ghost inside, "Good night, ugly auntie." Early one morning, everyone found Suabo stuck in the railing. Grandpa Su quickly said, "I'll call 911 right now." Suabo froze. Firefighters were like superheroes in her eyes, her idols. There was no way she could let them see her looking so silly. She immediately told her grandpa not to call, saying she could get herself out. She took a deep breath, then banged her little head against the railing, which hurt a bit. Downstairs, Suabo's uncles were nervously discussing how to safely free her head. Not far behind them, someone stood at the doorway, watching with a cold look. Seeing how the Su family reacted so quickly and with such concern, Wei Wan felt a twinge of jealousy. She's just stuck on the second floor. Is it really worth all this fuss, she thought. Meanwhile, Ji Chang leaned on the railing, casually watching the little one stuck there. "Suabo, with your magic and that red string on your wrist, why don't you just break the railing?" Suabo's master tried to trick her, but she wasn't falling for it. "There's no way I could break the railing," she thought. "How do you know unless you try?" her master teased. Amid all the tension, no one noticed Suabo's little hands gripping the railing. She used all her strength, and with a hard pull, she actually bent the iron bar. Her small head slipped right out, freeing her easily. Wow, Suabo really did it! The entire Su family was stunned, staring at the bent iron railing. Suichen quickly stepped in front of Suabo, blocking the view of the bent railing from others. Wei Wan, who was watching suspiciously, couldn't believe how they were acting as if they were guarding something precious. "It's just a kid, what's with all the secrecy?" she thought. After Wei Wan left, Suisheng asked Suabo, "Did you bend this?" Suabo nodded, "Yeah." Suisheng and his brothers exchanged serious looks. "No one should talk about this," Suisheng said sternly. "Suabo, don't show off your strength in front of others, okay?" Suabo nodded, not fully understanding. Just then, Suyina rushed in with a big pair of pliers. "I'm here, Suabo. Don't be scared, your fifth uncle is here to save you." Suabo looked up and said, "No need, I'm already out." Suyina froze when he saw the bent iron railing. Suisheng whispered, "Cut the railing down quickly, so no one else sees how strong Suabo is." "How about coming to the construction site with me?" Su Luo sighed. "Suabo, why do you want to go there?" "The construction site is dangerous, no one's allowed in." Suabo proudly replied, "I'm not just no one, I'm sweet." Everyone paused, realizing once again, she's still just a kid. Suyina was like a tough guy with a soft heart, and Suabo was the sweetest thing ever. "Let's go. I'll take you flying." Suabo went to her room and changed into a cute little suspender dress. She grabbed an adorable cat-shaped bag and happily headed downstairs, where she ran into Weiwan and greeted her politely. Weiwan responded with a simple hum. Suabo sneakily observed her second aunt, noticing something strange on her face. It looked like there was some dark shadow. She wondered, what's on her face? Ji Chang, who was floating nearby, explained to her, "That's death energy. Because you opened your heavenly eye last night, you can see it. Only people who have killed someone and were around when the person died can get marked by this kind of energy." Suabo was startled when she heard "killed someone." Just then, her second uncle called from downstairs, asking if she was ready to go. Since her second uncle was an architect and loved spending time on construction sites, Suabo went with him to check out the site. When she saw the stadium being built, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow! It's so pretty! It's like a giant watch fell from the sky and broke apart." Sibling, her second uncle, was surprised and pleased. "That's what I've been designing for a long time," he said, his inspiration coming from a mechanical watch. Suabo turned to him and asked, "Did you design this, uncle?" "That's so cool." Meanwhile, Ji Chang sitting nearby yawned. "Come here, Suabo, let me teach you how to estimate things." He raised her hand and pulled out a female ghost from a good. He quickly drew a symbol on the ghost's forehead with his thumb and middle finger. This is called a work symbol. Once it's drawn, the ghost will work for you. The female ghost, who had been dragged out early in the morning, protested, "Can you be reasonable? It's broad daylight, and you're making me work. This isn't just labor, it's like you're taking my life." Normally, ghosts can't appear during the day, except for really strong ones, but even they have to hide in the shadows. Only really evil ghosts can freely move around in broad daylight, so this ugly auntie can't stay out here. If the car door opens, she'll disappear into thin air. So now, I'm going to teach you a soul technique, which is basically attaching this ugly auntie to an object so she can move around during the day. Suabo, find something light that can fly with the wind. Ji Chang said this, glancing at the parrot. Suabo followed his gaze and muttered, "Something light that can fly." The parrot, sensing something was up, shouted, "Don't pluck my feathers." Suabo reassured, I won't, we'll leave your feathers alone." Sibling, standing nearby, was confused. Suddenly, Subao's eyes lit up as she grabbed something. The female ghost noticed it and panicked, "Wait, you're not seriously thinking of attaching me to that plastic bag with bird poop in it, are you?" Suabo shook the plastic bag a bit, "Don't worry, ugly auntie. There's just a little bird poop in here, it's not dirty at all. I'll even put a napkin in there for you." The female ghost twitched, thinking, "Are you kidding me? I'm stuck with a bag full of bird poop." Sibling thought Suabo was calling the plastic bag for ugly auntie and smiled at her innocence. Ji Chang said, "Soul techniques are a bit harder than opening the heavenly eye, so don't worry if you can't do it on your first try." Suabo nodded, while Ji Chang kept mumbling instructions and pointed at the female ghost. With a quick whoosh, the female ghost attached herself to the plastic bag. Ji Chang asked, "Can you remember everything?" Suabo tilted her head, her little face scrunched up in confusion. She tried counting on her fingers, thinking, there are so many words, and the master was speaking so fast. Ji Chang couldn't help but smile at her struggle and thought, it's okay if she can't remember it all. but before he could say anything, the ghost suddenly shot out of the plastic bag. Suabo was puzzled, wondering why the ugly auntie had flown out. "Oh, I get it now," she thought. He was just startled because his energy had been completely overpowered. Whoa, this little girl actually got it right on her first try, even though she did it in reverse. Just then, the car stopped, and Sibling said, "We're here, let's get out." As soon as Suabo got out of the car, a gust of wind came, and the plastic bag flew out of her hand with a pop. Seeing Suabo trying to catch the bag, Sibling reassured her, "It's okay, there are cleaning ladies at the site." Suabo innocently squeezed her fingers, thinking, "But I didn't even get to help the ugly auntie get rid of the poop." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Wei-wan was having breakfast with her mom, looking upset. Wei-wan told her mom that Sibling wanted a divorce and blamed her for not raising Hanan properly. "I think Sibling already knows about what we did years ago when we ordered Li Mai to drug him," she added. Han's grandmother stood up and said, "So what if he knows? Li Mai has been missing for years, what can he possibly find out?" Her mom then said, "Let's go to the construction site to find Sibling." So, the mother and daughter headed there. At the construction site, Wei-wan suddenly noticed a plastic bag spinning on the empty ground, and for some reason, her heart skipped a beat. A chill ran down her spine as she watched the bag spin faster and faster until it abruptly stopped. She had a creepy feeling like the plastic bag was staring right at her. Then, out of nowhere, a gust of wind howled, making the bag fly straight at her face. The plastic bag smacked her right in the face, and she caught a whiff of something foul, some kind of nasty poop smeared on her nose. Wei-wan gasped for air and fell to the ground, almost suffocated by the plastic bag. Just when it seemed like she was going to be smothered, a hand reached out and yanked the bag away. Han's grandmother was also starting to feel uneasy. The mother and daughter were so scared that their faces turned pale. In a panic, they sprinted to Sibling's office. Sibling was busy looking at some blueprints when Wei-wan burst into the room, trying to throw herself into his arms. But Sibling frowned and took a step back. Wei-wan, already set on hugging him, ended up falling flat on the floor when he moved out of the way. Embarrassed, she scrambled to her feet, holding her nose. Han's grandmother quickly stepped forward and scolded, "Sibling, little Wan is your wife. How could you just step aside when she's trying to hug you?" Wei-wan felt utterly humiliated, but before she could say anything, she suddenly noticed Suabo drawing a ghost lady. Wei-wan's eyes went blank, and a shiver ran down her spine. "I killed Li Mai years ago," Wei-wan thought. "How does Suabo know what she looked like?" Suabo sat perfectly still in her chair, looking totally confused. She asked Master Ji Chang, "What's wrong with Auntie Wei-wan?" Ji Chang shook his head and said, "No saving her now. Didn't you see the bird poop on her face? She's got even more bad energy surrounding her now." Suabo glanced at Wei-wan again, noticing there wasn't any poop on her face, but thinking she still looked kind of gross.